Here's a story I was absolutely blown away by. I was fortunate to interview Phil Bessant, a sole practitioner from South Wales, and get this, in just 3 months from taking massive action and getting some great results, he increased his fee income, his gross recurring fees, from £250,000 to being on track to hit £400,000. And he's changed just one thing. He's changed the way that he prices, and in this video he's going to share exactly what he's been doing over the last 3 months to get extraordinary results. Let's hear from Phil now. I'm delighted to have Phil Bessant on the interview this time round, and Phil, this all came about because you kindly sent me an email the other day which I was just fascinated by. In fact, I nearly fell off my chair. The numbers were so staggering. So I really want to find out more, and I know other people will as well. And I know that you've been working through my pricing program and made some changes around the pricing, and we'll get into the how and what you did in a little while. But my first question is, if you could just kind of share the headline results, the numbers that you got, the big picture, the big results. That would be really interesting to start off with.
Okay, yeah, that sounds quite reasonable. Basically, I had 2 clients that we were looking at improving their profitability with, and I guess having gone 3/4 way through your program, which is sort of suggested to be, get out there and throw some ideas down and be brave, I met with the first one, which was going to save in the region of 100,000, and I basically quoted them 25,000 for doing that over the next 12 months.
Wow.
Like yourself, I did actually fall off the chair when they said yes. When can we start? That in itself gave me the confidence to move on to the second case, which actually happened the day after, and this was a sort of similar case, although it was less of a specific figure that we were looking at and more of a generating better figures and a better understanding. And so I quoted them 12,500.
Wow. And
they also said, where do we sign and how do I pay you? Which was very pleasing, seeing as that's exactly what you said they'd say.
Incredible.
They never really believed you, obviously.
so that's 37.5 grand's worth of fees that you got. What would you have charged if that had happened 6 months earlier?
Well, it's interesting because certainly the first one I'd quoted 25,000 to, and the initial reaction was clearly one of, wow, that's a lot of money. We'll probably want to think about it and talk about it, which left me a little disappointed because obviously one of the things you were clearly talking about was hopefully answering those sorts of questions and then getting a signature at the same time. Between them saying go away and come back, in my head I'm thinking, well, to be fair, I'd have probably charged somewhere around 7,000 or 8,000 maybe, and that would have been if I'd been brave. If I'd been less brave on the day, and if I'm honest, if I hadn't already covered most of your program, I'd have probably charged 5 or 6.
Okay.
But as you quite rightly said, based on time, that would have never covered even the time I'd have spent, because it would have been a monthly project. I'd have probably found myself spending twice as much time as I originally thought might have happened. But when I went back for the second meeting, in my head I was already thinking, well, I can't go lower than 10. It's got to be at least 10. But as I say, their reaction was just explain again what we're going to get, which I did. Went through in a fair amount of detail, and as I say, they asked at the end, where do we sign and how do you want paying? So very pleased with that. The 12.5 one, I'd have probably said, because that's only quarterly meetings, I'd have probably charged something like £600 a meeting, 2.5, maybe 3,000.
Yeah, wow. So a massive difference between what you perhaps would have charged and what you did charge. So
right.
In a second, I'm going to ask you to explain how you did that, because I'd love to know what you did. But just to put everything into context, just so we can kind of get a better understanding of you and your practice, if you could just say a little bit more about your background, about you personally and your practice, how long you've been in practice, what sort of size you are, where you're based, that would be just good background.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been in practice since 1994. I'm a chartered management accountant. Initially, obviously, with the back threshold being so low, I had to form a partnership with an ACCA, someone who could do the audit work. That lasted for 14 years. And then, out of the blue, my partner decided he wanted to split. I went along to 2020 as it happens, and they came up with all sorts of ideas as to how you should run the practice, which sort of tied in with my thinking, which was basically, we're here to provide a service to customers, and everyone really needs to be part of that. So we started Phil Bessant Limited as it is now on the 1st of April 2012. Obviously, I had about £250,000 worth of fees, recurring fees, and I brought half of the staff with me. I must say, honestly, if I'm honest, it was the better half of the staff in that they were keen to grow the business with me. We then basically took the view that we needed to work closer with clients. We need to get a better understanding of what we're doing, because in the past everything's been time-based, everything's been, everything's based on fixed fees, which I suppose was a big tick when I first started listening to you. But then when I actually paid attention rather than just listening to you, I discovered that fixed fees are one thing, but what we're actually doing now is not fixed fees at all, in that we go out. It is fixed in that we tell them what they're going to pay, but it's no longer based on, that's going to take me 10 hours or 12 hours or 30 hours. It's based on properly explaining to them what they're going to get. And even prior to these two particular cases, we'd already started the 20% increase of fees, and not had one person saying, that's ridiculous, you can't increase your fees by 20%. And mainly because we'd taken your advice and done it in a way that they understood exactly what they were getting for their money. We introduced the 3-star, 4-star, 5-star service, and I've been amazed about the number of clients who we thought, they're going to want the 3-star because that's slightly more expensive than they've been paying up until now. But it's something like 80% of the clients we've spoken to have gone for the 4 or 5-star service. So we've been able to, on average, increase our fees by just under 30%, 28%. Over the last 3 months that we've been doing it.
Yeah.
And as I say, there's 7 of us, including myself. We outsource to India all our accounts prep. We outsource our payroll. And in fact, that clears us time to actually spend time with the clients so that we can actually make sure they understand what they're getting.
So tell me, when did you start working through my effective pricing for accountants program, and what was the reason that made you decide this is something I need to do?
Well, I started when I was in Cyprus in June this year. You sent through a link. I'd even been through LinkedIn, and then obviously as soon as I connected to that, you then showed me a couple of videos, made contact with a couple of those, and one of the things they talked about was the program itself. We were having issues with people with debt collection, if I'm honest. That was the one, which is your lesson 10, which is a bit frightening because I'm thinking, based on what I was reading, it was going to take me quite a while to get to lesson 10, so I could work out how to sort all my bad debts out. Not bad debts as such, but slow payers then.
Yeah.
So we started in June. One of the things I think you said was to basically put some time in the diary to make sure that you do every Thursday or whatever, sit down and go through it. I must admit, right from the minute I started following the program, I couldn't wait for the next one. So I was basically doing it on an evening, every night of the week, literally going through, coming back in. I think the girls were getting a little fed up with me coming in with some more of your ideas. To the extent that I think I finished it about probably a month ago now, the first 11. Eagerly awaiting that 12th one, and I've already signed on, I think, to meet with yourselves in October.
Okay.
I just felt that really, if we were going to grow the practice, we needed to build on things like referrals. We needed people to be happy, and we needed to know that they were, getting a very good service. But I don't think there's much within your program that we haven't been through. We've identified our ideal client. We've scored all our clients into categories: gold, silver, bronze, bin and tin, or tin and bin. We've started to talk to someone locally about taking on our binnable clients. We've done as I say, everyone now pays up front. Even our existing clients, when we renew their contract, it's paid up front. Don't think if there's anything I have missed actually from your program.
It's extraordinary that I'm absolutely I'm impressed that that's only 3 months ago that you started the program. Then June, because we're now in September, and it's supposed to be a 12-month program, but you've gone through it in 2 months, which is great. But there's always a risk that someone that rushes through things doesn't actually implement. But what you've done, which is staggering, is you've worked through it and you've gone, and from the sounds of what you're saying, you've implemented stuff and got some staggering results in just the first 3 months. So I'm staggered by that. Obviously you're an exceptional accountant, and it's stories like this. It's the reason why I get out of bed in the morning wanting to help accountants, when I hear people taking the advice, doing stuff, and getting great results. So this is really, well, it's making me feel proud that I've made a difference. So what I'd love to know now is a bit more of the how you've done it. Then, so you've got these so far you've got these 2 incredible results, and I think actually it's more than that if you talk about the putting the price up across the board and stuff, and I might come back to that in a bit. But just going back to these 2 particular cases where you've got extraordinary fees, what's the process that you've gone through then? How did you get those particular prices?
Well, I think basically what I did was both of the clients were clearly in need. Were clearly in need of support, and one was turning over about £1 million, and considering they were turning over £1 million and making somewhere in the region of £300,000 to £400,000 profit, they didn't really have any financial controls at all. It was just debtor days are incredibly high, etc. And I worked with them I've probably been working with them now for 8 years, and I just felt that if they want to grow the business, they're looking to grow it to 10 million, then they needed to have these systems and procedures in place, and they needed to understand how to control the company from a financial point of view. So I basically approached them with that in mind. I'd already prepared some management accounts, which they'd never had before. I'm not sure you've ever heard of a company called Optigra, but
I have, yes.
They basically provide MRP reports directly linked into Sage. The client uses Sage, so it was fairly straightforward to prepare a set of management accounts with all the graphical presentation of how they've done against budget and against last year's accounts, etc. I'd also put together a forecast for the next 5 years to show how they could get to the £10 million. And all of this had been done free of charge, basically, to sort of get them around the table to see what they could be doing. So I think once I sat down and explained, basically, we're going to meet in this particular case every 2 months. We're going to go through the MRP report that I've got, and we're going to make sure that their procedures for things like debt control is correct. And based on that, it was easy to see that I could easily generate another £100,000 of bottom line profit for them. So I just obviously had about 2 weeks prior to that gone through your course where it said, don't do it on time, don't try and pluck a figure out of the air, actually sit down and do it on the 25%. So I can certainly recall the evening before putting the presentation together, because obviously I'd written up the proposal, thinking that's probably going to be a little bit easier to just put it under their nose and pray that they just sign the bottom. But in fairness to them, they sort of wanted to know what they were going to get, so we went through the process of explaining it to them. You could see there was 2 of them. The one who never likes spending money, and the other one who sort of gets an understanding that, well, if you're going to pay for something, you've got to, you get what you pay for it. So the one was keen to go ahead, the other one needed time to think about it. But that was the process we went through, just sort of put 25% on what I knew would be a minimum that I achieved. The second one, they've actually grown so rapidly. Somebody wrote there, we've been acting for 3 years, they've only been trading 3 years. Their first year's turnover was 200,000. The second year is 600,000, and they're already up to $1 million in 7 months of this year. And again, no financial reports, nothing at all. In fact, the first year's genuinely was a black bag full of paperwork.
Right.
One of the things we did for them in the last 2 months is actually introduce them to Sage. They've now put their records onto Sage, and it's basically on the back of that we've said, well, now you've got Sage again, we can produce this MRP report. We can go through that with you on a quarterly basis. We can build a forecast, and you can start to see exactly what you're doing with the company. And again, in that particular case, they were very happy once I'd explained what they were going to get to sign up and pay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously two incredible results there, but also you said then earlier that you've put your fees up by, I think you said 30%, and that's partly by using the menu price and the 3, 4, 5 star. And it was interesting. The point you made, which I thought was really interesting, is you said that there were several clients where you thought that they'd go just for the 3 star, but actually when you presented them with the options, many of them went for 4 or 5. And I think then the learning point there is never prejudge what people will or won't buy. So did you explain a little bit about the process of how you presented those options to your clients?
Okay, we use your contract renewal basis as a start point. We use that letter, and then attached to that we will have a sort of checklist where they can decide whether they want the 3 star, which is in essence set of accounts, tax returns, etc., or whether they actually want to include other parts of the service. So, for example, one of the ones we tend to offer is a pre-year-end meeting. When we say free, obviously that then takes it up to the 4 star, and 5 star tends to be a tax planning meeting. One of the things that you talked about in one of the courses was actually to basically agree to meet with the client as often as they want to talk about their figures, which is something that we've now included in our 4 star. So any one of our clients can meet with us at any time they want, provided they've gone for at least the 4 star service. Okay. What we tend to find is once they, as you quite rightly point out in your course, if you go for the 4 star and make the 5 star not that much more expensive, but just a little bit more, then invariably they do sign 5. I think we've had only one settle on the 4. The majority of them have either gone 3 or 5, and the 3 is at least 20% more they were paying last year. Hence, the average fees have gone up by 28% in total.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. In 3 months. And I suppose making a joke of it, but we did have one instance where one of the staff members decided that they would. They'd obviously been told by me that we were looking to get 20%, so they increased one of our clients' fees by 20%. But she did it not based on what we charged them last year, but actually based on what was built into the accounts. And basically, what happened last year was their records were better, so we had agreed that their fees would stay the same for that year, but we provided for an extra 10% in the accounts, thinking we were going to get it. So she actually increased the fee by 30% by accident. But again, they paid. They had no problem with that. They knew, it was quoted to them. We do now meet with all our clients, certainly at the very longest 3 months before their year end. But if we can't do it after 3 months to go, we get as close as we can. But certainly before their year end, and agree the contract renewal, explain what they're going to get, and explain what their options are, 3 star, 4 star, and what extra each bit does. And we've only got one client that didn't actually agree to either 3 star, 4 star, or 5 star on the day, and we've got a little bit of a bookie going upstairs with as to whether he'll sign for the 3 star, 4 star, or 5 star service at the end of the day, and we'll know that within the next couple of weeks. I think he'll just settle for the 20% increase 3 star. But all of my staff seem to think he's going to go for the 5 star service. So I promised if he does, I'll take him up from him.
Fantastic. So
yeah, but again, that's just to keep that, so they're not only involved in what's going on, but actually they too are out meeting clients. So it's easier if they understand the sort of what we're doing.
So it sounds like you're using some of the systems that are in the program, because you've mentioned the contract renewal letter. Could you perhaps mention 2 or 3 other of the systems that you're using? And also, I'd be interested to know to what extent are you using the systems out of the box, if you like, and to what extent are you actually making substantive changes to them? Like, for example, the contract renewal letter. Are you using it as it is, or are you making lots of changes?
I don't think we're making many changes, mainly because I think we've seen the reaction we get when we just use it as is. We include the unique selling points in every one. Our standard now has those in there. The options to pay, i.e. upfront, on credit card. We actually offer a fee plan system as well. So we've sort of built that. That's probably the only significant change we've made, or any noticeable change to anything you've done. I think partly because listening to you, it's quite obvious that you know what you're talking about, and therefore it's easy to say, well, actually, let's just. I know you say things like 20% one month, 25% the next month increases. But we've done just that, trying to find a sort of break. So we've literally followed you to the letter.
Okay, thank you.
But if we find out something new, it might all fall apart. But I guess it is early days yet. So if we go back to the one that we called it 12.5, it was quite interesting because we always have a staff meeting on a Friday afternoon just to sort of see how everyone's doing, what's missing, what help do we need, etc. And I explained to them, I signed the 25,000. I said, I'm going to see this other client tomorrow morning, or Monday morning as it was. What do you think as a team we should quote them? Bear in mind that, say, in essence, it was going to be quarterly meetings to go through the MRP report. And I think the most we charged prior to starting your course was £600 for one of those.
Right. And
they suggested that's what we do. So that's where the sort of £2.5 came from. And so I'm actually thinking 12.5. And of course, their initial reaction was go for it. Don't have anything to lose of you, because we're not getting, we don't do anything for that client at the moment. So even if we ended up having to come down from the 12.5, you're unlikely to come all the way down to 2.5, aren't you? So I think that in itself, having them understanding the way we're thinking and following. They've seen a few of your courses. There's been certain parts of it. Oh, that's worth sitting down with the whole team and listening to having you say it rather than me. So we're all much of a, everyone's thinking the same way. We all understand that we're looking to, spend time with clients that we want to work with rather than just taking everybody that comes through the door.
Brilliant, fascinating. You've mentioned that you've put the prices up by, on average, 30%. You've had these couple of really big wins. If you were to put and I'm only talking rough numbers, if you were to put a number on what that would make, what difference that would make financially over the course of a 12-month period, putting the fees up that much and those odd one-off ones, what sort of number would you put on that?
Well, that's quite an interesting question, because what we started with was, say, some in the region of 250 recurring fees. And within a 12 months, I'd said to the girls who was in our latest meeting that I wanted to hit 500,000 within 3 years. I won't ask you to try and imagine what their initial reaction was, but certainly one of them said, no chance, no way. If we get to 300, that would be great. Yeah. We met. One of the things I did at the end, once I finished the course, I actually had what we called an away day. So I sat down with all of the staff, presented basically where we were, where we'd come. We'd already grown our business by over 25% in the first 12 months. So seeing the 500,000 as a target and knowing that we had, it seems like the two new clients coming up, we'd like to think we'd certainly hit 400,000 within the next 12 months.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
Obviously, as well as listening to yourself, we like to think. I'm going to use the word proactive now when you're going to tell me I'm not, but never mind. It's something that we did think we were beforehand, and I must admit, I know one of your lectures talks about being proactive is sort of sitting down and putting the fixed fee in, which I have to say that's what we thought it meant as well. But a lot of the things you've talked about in terms of being genuinely proactive, i.e. meeting with the client before the year end, doing some figures for free, testing the water with figures with them, and so they see what understanding they get. we've done all of that in this short period, which is to say, that in some instances the girls just think I go home every night and come back in with another. At some point I'm going to start claiming all as being mine instead of yours, but I don't think they'll ever believe me. But I guess the next real stage for us is to get on with the Times Up version. I suppose that's one of the frustrating things, is discussing it through. It looks as if we probably won't do that until I come to meet with you in October, which is a shame because I wanted it last week or the week before.
Yeah. But then again, you can't do everything on day one. You've got to, bit by bit. And it sounds like you're taking, you're taking positive steps, doing things, and getting great results, which is fantastic. So we're coming to the end of our time together, and I suppose my last question would be, from all the stuff that you've done over the last 3 months, for anybody that's wanting to change the way they price and kind of emulate the sort of results you're getting, if you were to pass on 2 or 3 key tips in the area of pricing, what would those tips be?
Well, I suppose the 3 tips I would definitely give is, one is obviously to make sure they've gone through your course. Certainly, I don't think there's a part of that I couldn't probably recite to you if you asked me to. Secondly, I think one of the most important parts of what you covered was explaining to the client what they're going to get. I think everyone believes that just by saying to a client, I'm going to do your accounts and tax returns, that the client knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They don't. So once you do start breaking it down into, well, actually what I'm going to do is step 1, 2, 3 and so on, it's amazing how their eyes light up when they realise, oh, actually now I understand why I'm paying that fee or that fee. I don't see a problem with the fee itself.
Yeah. That's
certainly that. And I suppose the other thing I would suggest is you be extremely brave. I was extremely proud of myself when I slapped the £25,000 on the table. Not because it was 25,000, but because I actually did exactly what you said, which was shut up and let them absorb that first, and then wait for their feedback, rather than, I know for a fact in the past I would have either not put the 25 on the table, or if I put the 25 on the table, almost immediately I'd start working back and going, well, we can do it for 22, or well, what about 20? And I probably talked myself down to about 10 by the time I finished.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I had done things. You just sit there, look at the client's eyes, and think, oh no, you can take that. And as you say, you prejudge them. And every time I come away with a new renewal letter signed, it just makes me cry, because I think we've been missing, all that's been left on the table for how many years? We've got a client, because we've not been brave enough to say, look, we're good at what we do. We know you get the results we promised. So that's the figure.
Yeah.
It's been tremendous, I must admit.
Oh, thank you for that.
Just my own confidence.
Yeah.
You believe you know what you're talking about, and you obviously build a bit of confidence. But seeing these sorts of results makes you realise that actually, you shouldn't have to be. I don't mean this to sound in any way big-headed, but you shouldn't be messing about with the butchers of these world who want to give you a black bag to sort it out, when there's people out there who love that work. That's what they set out to do. We are wasting time with that when we could be building our client base and working with clients that we want to work with, who want us to work with them, and want to generate more profits.
Yeah.
So yeah, be brave.
It's been fascinating talking to you, Phil. It's a shame we've run out of time, because I'd love to pick your brains further, because you're doing so much. But certainly we'll meet next month, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure there'll be many more things you've done in the next few weeks. So I just need to say thank you so much. And I look forward to speaking to you soon, Phil. Goodbye for now.
Thank you very much.